300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. Have to ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game. I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning, and welcome to Morning Joe right here on JJ Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Glad to have you with me on a Wednesday morning. A lot to talk about. Some interesting headlines in college football. How one program landed a new punter for the program from a frat house party. I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. But I have to start with a developing story. Obviously, LIV Golf's been around for several weeks, several months on end. We've been seeing a lot of players defecting. And now Tiger Woods allegedly met with other top golfers this week, including yesterday, to try to rally support against LIV Golf and actually to defend the PGA Tour. They're talking with Commissioner Jay Monahan. So for the longest time, I've kept my feelings, my personal beliefs about LIV Golf private because it's become very politicized and it's become one of these issues where people are very sensitive and they've got polarizing opinions and it's emotional. And if you support LIV Golf, it implies a certain partisanship, typically conservative. And if you don't support LIV Golf, you're likely a liberal. But to me, this is a sports, obviously sports topic, but it's a lot more convoluted and complex than that. And I think that it's too simple of an answer to just simply imply that your position means you're leaning a certain partisan way. It's not that black and white to me. And if we were to set aside our ideological differences and simply approach this topic and how Tiger Woods' involvement and what's been transpiring from the perspective of how is the PGA Tour handling a rival upstart league? Because if the argument is simply, hey, we don't support anyone being a part of a league that's funded by individuals that have violated human rights, and the Saudis, if that's simply what the argument is about, then we don't have any argument. There's nothing to debate here. I'm not going to talk about this. Other news outlets aren't going to talk about this. If the argument this entire time, if the reason why the PGA Tour was livid, if the reason why the players in the PGA Tour were so upset and frustrated by players defecting simply on the rationale that how could you ever join a league that's funded by these types of people? If that's the sole reason behind the argument and by the frustrations, then there's no argument. But I think the problem is the original argument has become a lot more diluted, and we've shifted away from that original premise of it's unthinkable, it's unfathomable that we would accept money from these types of people, whereas now the argument has shifted and it's the PGA Tour is threatened by LIV Golf. And what can current PGA Tour players do to alleviate the situation and derail LIV Golf's efforts? Not on the basis of who's funding it, but simply on the basis that it's threatening the institution, the PGA Tour itself. And this is a rivaling league. And that's a very interesting distinction that I think hasn't been touched on enough. And this is why I actually am not in approval of Tiger Woods meeting with these other players to form a coalition and to rally the support. Because I think, by all accounts, what they've been discussing hasn't been the crux of the issue. Tiger Woods is a billionaire. He's benefited greatly from the PGA Tour. He's made millions and millions of dollars, all deserving, because, and it's been off of his own merits, off of his talent, off of his ability to capitalize on the PGA Tour events and win time and time and time again. And so he can afford to turn down a $700, $800 million offer to join LIV Golf. He can afford to decline it and reject that offer because he's accumulated generational wealth on the backs of the PGA Tour. But most of those guys can't. And again, whether or not you or other people agree with those players' decisions to defect, and I certainly don't, because of the human rights issues. But even if we do feel that way, most of those other golfers aren't in the position where they can afford or would be wanting to turn down that type of money. And quite frankly, they shouldn't have to. It's not their fault that perhaps the PGA Tour isn't doing enough on their end to compensate them with guaranteed money. And I think that is the heart of the issue, is what these players should be talking about with Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour. And what the PGA Tour should be doing, instead of lambasting publicly guys who defect for LIV Golf, is asking themselves internally, why are they leaving? Because that's the heart of the issue. Again, if this was simply a political stance argument, there's no argument. If this was simply about a black and white decision, you join, it means you support Saudis. If you don't, you don't. If that was simply what we were talking about, then there'd be nothing to talk about. But now, as we're starting to learn more about this league and we're starting to see more and more players shift away and defect, we've altered what the headlines are. And now it's about defending the PGA Tour. And the PGA Tour has taken a hardline stance, and they have come out and prevented players, and they've banned players that have joined LIV Golf from participating in PGA Tour events, including majors. There have been a select number of golfers on the Pro Tour that have been permitted to play in some PGA Tour events. And that's fair, too, on the part of the PGA Tour. I've got no problem with them enforcing that rule. If you go elect to play in the LIV Golf tournaments, then you know fully well that you're not going to be able to participate in PGA Tour events. And if that's a decision you want to make, that's a decision you can make. You should be able to make it. But either two things are going to happen. Two things are going to happen. Either the PGA Tour is going to realize we're probably going to have to guarantee these golfers more money and offer a larger purse to entice them to stay, or we just roll the dice and you can walk and defect and accept more money from LIV Golf, and we're just going to see how things play out. But the problem is the latter alternative is proving to be harmful to their business, and it's hindering their prosperousness, because a lot of players are defecting, a lot of players are accepting the money, and it's hurting the business of the PGA Tour, and they're losing money, and they're losing interest, and they're losing big name players that are all defecting. And really what's going to happen is likely the former alternative. And so if I was Tiger Woods and I'm Rory McIlroy and I'm Justin Thomas and I'm Jordan Spieth and I'm Ricky Fowler and some of the more prominent players that are still on the tour, because there are reports and rumors that Cameron Smith, the number 2 ranked player in the world, may join LIV Golf. If I'm these elite golfers, I would be addressing the elephant in the room and not asking, or rather, not criticizing these players for leaving, but instead asking, why are they leaving? And addressing that problem. Because until you address that problem, you're going to have the same problem, which is players are going to continue to leave. And if you want to run that risk, if you're the PGA Tour, by all means, go ahead. And during that process, if you decide to join LIV Golf, you shouldn't be upset that the PGA Tour denies you opportunities to play in the PGA Tour. That's a decision you make. Obviously, we remember when the NBA and the ABA merged. Initially, the NBA was established in the late 1940s, the ABA the 1960s, and the NBA kept poaching all the best players from the ABA, including Julius Erving, Dr. J. Why? Because they could give more money. It was a more glamorous, more prestigious league. Now, again, who was backing and funding the league is different in this instance. But I think that we've tried to reduce the argument down to a simple pro or against choice. And that's why I've been opposing this meeting the more time that I've been thinking about it, is because I don't truly believe that the meeting is intended. I don't think the intentions of this meeting are to fully better the PGA Tour and its players. And more importantly, its players, but more how to protect the PGA Tour and the institution itself. Whereas what they should be doing is asking, why are these players leaving? And how can we make the PGA Tour more enticing so that we don't lose our core guys? So I just think we've been placing a little too much emphasis on the faultiness and on the erroneous decisions of the golfers to leave for LIV Golf. And we're blaming them for their decisions, and we're heaping all this criticism in their way and negativity in their way. And again, I disagree with it. I wouldn't opt to leave for LIV Golf, but no one's offered me $200 million. And instead, they should be talking to Jay Monahan, and saying, okay, Commissioner, there's a reason why they're leaving. How can we treat our players better? How can we compensate them better so that they don't feel the need to take money elsewhere? And that's where I think the heart of the problem lies. So with that, I want to transition to more jovial topic, the Detroit Lions in the NFL. They're obviously being featured right now on HBO's Hard Knocks. Just a tremendous, tremendous limited series. And especially the fact that they've added a mid-season series is very interesting. It was a big success with the Indianapolis Colts last year, but I love the training camp Hard Knocks with the Detroit Lions. I am all in on the Detroit Lions this year. I tweeted it out after I saw Jamal Williams's preseason speech about how emotional he was trying to inspire the guys in training camp, saying, anytime you're tired or frustrated or lazy or can't give it your all, think about that record that we had last year. And he was very passionate about it. It was a very passionate speech. And he perfectly embodies their head coach, Dan Campbell, who also gave an epic preseason speech the other day. They just featured it on the show last night. And the one thing that I've always said about Dan Campbell is I absolutely love how much he's invested in his players. He cares about his players. You can tell whether or not you believe he's a good X's and O's coach, and only time will tell. He is a people person. He cares deeply about his players. He's passionate. He's enthusiastic, extremely optimistic, filled with energy. He's participating in camp drills with his players. And I love everything that he embodies. I love the attitude and the approach that he comes to camp with, the passion that he exudes every single time he's delivering a speech. And this is the Detroit Lions team that I think is going to shake some heads this year. And when we look at their record from a season ago in 2021, they were 3-13-1. They started out the year 0-8 and then finished 3-3 in their final 6 games. And of those 13 losses of the Detroit Lions last year, 3 of them were within 2 points. We all remember in the 3rd game of the season, Justin Tucker's historic 66-yard field goal to win 19-17. The Lions were up in that game. They were competing against the 49ers in their opener. They actually had the ball driving with 2 minutes to go, down 8. Against the Minnesota Vikings. Again, they led 17-16 with 37 seconds left. And then they gave up a game-winning field goal against the Rams. They led going into the 4th quarter. This has always been a very competitive roster and a competitive team that battles every single time they play, every single time they take to the field, and they're on the gridiron. They're not an easy win. And they've proven that. And they are embodying the backbone of Dan Campbell, the defensive guy who's all heart, strength, just brute physicality. And the players play in that similar fashion. And when I looked at the roster, they're actually a very improving roster. Jared Goff, I think, is a serviceable starting quarterback. I think he's a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL. You still have DeAndre Swift, who's only getting better and better. He's a versatile running back. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown at the wide receiver spot. DJ Chark. TJ Hawkinson is a big-bodied tight end. I like what he brings to the table. Obviously, their O-line is getting better. They drafted Penei Sewell last season. He's a monster. He's returning. Defense still needs a little bit of improvement, but they drafted Aiden Hutchinson 2nd overall, and by all reports, he's been fantastic in camp, so they can only get better in that regard. And I just so badly, not to mention, by the way, Jameson Williams out of Alabama will be returning at some point. He's rehabbing from an injury. And I just so badly want for this Detroit Lions team to make the postseason. And now with the expanded playoffs, the expanded wild card, one additional team from each conference makes it. So it's the top 7 teams from each conference. And I so badly want the Detroit Lions to be in the mix. And I think ultimately, as bullish as I am about them, I think they'll probably finish just a hair short with 7 or 8 wins, probably finish 9th or 8th, likely, in the NFC, which I still think is a huge improvement from a season ago, and they'll continue to be high enough where they can draft some good players. But I do believe in this team, and I would love for them to make the playoffs. I do think that emotionally charged teams can draw inspiration early on in the season. Whether or not it lasts throughout the entirety of the season, you still have to wait and see. But I am all in. I'm rubber stamping the Detroit Lions this year. This is going to be a really good ball club, and I think a team that's going to shake some heads. I would not be entirely surprised if they ultimately were able to sneak into the wild card spot. Could they be better than the Washington Commanders? I think so. But we'll wait and see. but I'm excited and I love watching them on HBO. They are absolutely entertaining. They're fun. They're going to be that way this year. I think they'll get off to a much better start in the first 8 games this year than they did last year, and I cannot wait to see that happen. All right, so final topic, my Malkin's moments. I have some great Malkin's moments for you this week. Really unique Malkin's moments that are a little bit different from the traditional Malkin's moments that I've talked about. But I have to start first. The Los Angeles Dodgers became the first MLB team this year in 2022 to reach 80 wins. It came on Monday when they beat the Milwaukee Brewers 4-0 on the road to claim their 80th win of the season. This team just continues to rebuild and retool and replenish. It was crushing news to hear that Walker Buehler is out for the entirety of the season, but this is a deep roster. They've got other guys in the bullpen, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May projected to come back. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw, Julio Urias. They've got a good bullpen. I think they'll be able to withstand this, but this was a major blow, no doubt. But this team is still humming. They are still firing on all cylinders. At one point, just won 12 straight games. So they were the hottest team in baseball, and it's only fitting that they're the first team to reach 80 wins on the season. From LA Chargers camp, All-Pro safety Derwin James just this morning became the highest paid safety in NFL history. Signed a 4-year, $76.4 million contract with $42 million in guaranteed money. His average annual salary of $19 million per season is the highest among any safety ever in the history of the NFL. And initially, he'd been kind of holding in with the Chargers. He was reporting to training camp, but wasn't actually participating in any of the drills, and any team drills, any individual drills. But he's the top paid safety ever. This is a guy who was the 17th overall pick in the 2018 draft. And he's certainly been battling some injuries for stretches, missed pretty much the entirety of the 2020 season. 2021 was limited. But you talk about first impressions. His rookie year, he was named a Pro Bowler. 3 interceptions. 108 tackles. This was someone who, again, had 3.5 sacks his rookie year, 13 pass breakups en route to being named a Pro Bowler. He was also recently an All-Pro, and he finished second in Defensive Rookie of the Year voting that season. And then you look at last year in 2021, he had 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, and 118 tackles en route to being named a Pro Bowler. This guy has kind of changed the secondary for the Chargers. Their defense is extremely talented. This is a really good Chargers team, and he deserved to get that money. And I'm glad that he did. Finally, this is probably the best Malkin's moment. At least one of my favorites that I've had in a long time. So Ole Miss is prepping for their college football season in 2022. Lane Kiffin was at the podium, and the media asked him, "How did you find your new kicker, Lane?" He said, "Oh, found him at a frat party." Legitimately found their Division I punter at a frat party. This is unbelievable. The kid's name is Charlie Pollock. He actually spent 1 year at Nevada, a Division I program. He was a 2-star recruit, and he earned himself a scholarship at Nevada. Didn't play at all and decided to enter the transfer portal. But he's had Division I experience, and he just enrolled at Ole Miss, not to play college football, but simply to attend the school. And when Lane Kiffin sent out his players to say, "Hey, find me a punter," they stumbled upon this guy at a frat party it is specifically a keg party, was what was reported out of Ole Miss media. And now they've got their new punter, all originating from Greek life. And apparently he was the number 13 punter in the 2020 recruiting class per 247 Sports. Coles, which is a website that specializes in special teams players, actually ranked Pollock as a 5-star recruit, including the nation's number 8 punter in 2020. Now, he's reportedly 250 pounds. Lane Kiffin said we're going to have to work on his conditioning a little bit, trying to get him down to 230, which was his playing weight when he was at Nevada, even though he didn't play at all. But I just think this story is absolutely amazing. And you just never know what types of athletes you're going to find at these Greek life parties. Again, it's very common for athletes to be given and to receive social bids. They don't have to participate in any of perhaps the pre-active member activities, to be intentionally vague, and some of the initiation activities they can kind of circumvent that and instead just show up at the parties. But the fact that Charlie Pollock was just pulled off the street from this frat party to join Ole Miss, a legitimate program with Lane Kiffin in the SEC, is absolutely spectacular. And if he actually gets playing time, the headlines are going to be through the roof. And I hope he thrives. I hope he exceeds and maybe can help elevate this Ole Miss program. Wouldn't that be something else? All right, that's all the time that I got for today, finishing a little bit early today. Thank you so much for joining me right here in Morning Joe every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Morning Joe, J-O, with Jonah Malkin on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter, at Jonah_Malkin, or at Morning_Joe_, JMalkin97 on Instagram, and Jonah Malkin on TikTok. Thank you so much. And as always, have a lovely rest of your